Ready?
Ready?
Thanks. Open the meeting of the Finance Committee, going through the town budgets. We're going to start with the library. You want to come up and give us a presentation? How we doing today?
Just swell, thank you.
Just swell.
Yes.
It ain't dark and wet and
The
cold.
sun is shining
Yeah.
and the snow is disappearing.
Disappeared, it's gone. And it's almost spring. And spring is good for the library.
Okay, we usually ask for level service and level funded, so.
So that's what I gave, a level funded, level service. What is probably most notable to you is that in October, we had a staff member leave, and she was a library assistant. And we feel that we do need a head of adult services to sort of oversee the adult area. The children's area has a head of youth services, and so the adult area needs a head of adult services. And so rather than replace the library assistant position and then ask for a new position later, we thought that in lieu of that, so we have had a temp for a few months, and we'll continue to have a temp unless this position gets funded. We would like to replace that position with a head of adult services, and that person would then do a lot of the programming and the supervisory and the marketing and doing a lot of stuff that I am doing and sort of not being able to do everything else that I need to be doing. And so as you can see, that position, I sort of stuck it in as a new position, head of adult services.
Could the trustees speak to this particular situation?
Sure.
This is part of the long-term planning of the library. You have heard from myself as a representative of the trustees for the past several years how the library has been working on, certainly for 5 years, building the resources to be in a position to apply to the state library building program, of which there are 2 phases, a design and planning phase, and then if that goes through for you, then a construction phase. These are very important grants, and they're very long term, and they only come up approximately the window of application for the first design phase. They only come up approximately every 7 or so, between 5 and 7 years. So there's one due to come up in the next cycle. We don't know when that will be. It depends on the state funding. To just recap, for the last 5 years, however, to apply for the first phase, the design and planning phase, this is a matching grant. Should the library be successful in its application, the town/library would be expected to pay a percentage of a matching fund. About 5 years ago, the then Board of Trustees, having researched the process and understanding that at that time the only real financial resources the library had was appropriated money from the town budget. However, there is money coming into the library from a couple of other sources. So the then trustees implemented a financial plan. And the financial plan was to, over the course of 5 years, to build a fund, a nest egg, let's call it that way, that when that opportunity to apply for the grant comes up, and when the state says what the matching funds will be, the library has the independent means to go ahead with the application because the library has done its financial planning to meet the matching fund requirement. Now, to come back to this position, the head of adult services, as Marie said, this opportunity presented itself in October with the stepping down of one position. To prepare for these grants, these state grants, again, the design and planning phase first, is an enormous, enormous amount of work, the bulk of which is done by the library directors. Marie has done extensive networking with her colleagues in the profession as to what that scope of work is. The trustees have had presentations from 2 libraries in the area, Bolton and Boylston, to understand how much work has to go into preparing an application. Right now, Marie's time is running the library, the overall head. So when this situation arose in October, as a possibility of being able to shift Marie's workload from what would be in effect July 1, later in the year after town meeting, this would immediately release Marie to start working on the copious materials, the needs assessment, etc., that has to be assembled prior to applying to one of these design phase grants. Furthermore, last week, Marie and I attended a day-long workshop of the Stoughton Library, where everyone involved in their process, all of the people, because it's a town decision, stepped a room full of people through the process. So at this point, the library is informed, but will need to prepare the necessary materials. And as I say, it has done its financial planning as soon as that application process opens, to be able to apply for the planning and design phase grant without coming to the town to ask for any matching funds. So that's the background to this position.
And you're just upgrading your position and taking some pressure off the director.
Correct.
I do have a couple of questions on the budget itself. The increase is not substantial.
It
So
is,
I don't see a big deal with that. I know we had some heat and air conditioning problems. Do we intend to have an article to fix the rest of it?
Can I come back on that one? Because Marie was in Vietnam when all of this happened. She was vacationing in a very hot country while we were here in a very, very hot library.
All right.
It got to be so bad that there was quite a few days we had to close the library. Basically, to answer your question, the library needs 4 HVAC units, 2 in the children's room, 1 in the basement, which is the community room, where the library has again managed to have some independent donations to help refurbish it.
and these 3 have already been
And we have
purchased
those.
and installed.
We have those. What we're missing is an HVAC on the ground floor, the adult collection. Right now, that temperature is controlled, and I use the term very loosely, by the window installations, and they're notorious for blowing everything in the microfiche, all the equipment blows.
To be more
Do you have a
specific,
plan for what you need
to
there?
be more specific, you can't run the air conditioner at the same time someone is looking up, using the microfilm machine to look up old copies of the item. You have to unplug the air conditioner.
So I do have a question for you, if I may. We're not quite clear where, right now, in the library budget for maintenance and repairs, which is where we would have looked to take the 7,000 for this particular, but then we also have the Director of Facilities putting in the budget for the library. So we're sort of confused at the moment. We're going to need $7,000 for an HVAC. That's a
You
simple-
don't have it in your budget correctly at this time?
Well, if we do, we completely wipe
Okay,
out
so-
that budget.
We haven't had the facilities manager in. He's preparing his budget. If it isn't in there, it definitely will be an article, so we should be prepared.
Okay,
I mean, there is free cash. We have no trouble fixing stuff that's broke. So when we bring him in here, we'll ask him, because
okay, and if he says it's not in his budget, then we'll put an,
I will let you know, and you'll make
Okay,
sure we have an
smashing.
article for enough
Yeah, that
money
would
to
be
do it
smashing.
right.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, smash
I
it.
don't mind spending money on the building. I don't think anybody does.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't really see anything. Guys got any question on this budget? I mean, you're upgrading the position, you're trying to do what you're supposed to do, that's why you're here, so I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
right, great.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much,
Thank you.
everybody.
How are you?
Sad but true, I want to tell you the meeting's getting taped, so you know that, so. And we get to keep the yellow folder too?
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks like spring to me.
Everything I have ends up in Diane Magliozzi's office anyways, paper clips.
We color coordinate things at our office. Okay.
Nice.
See your budget requests. They said we usually look at 3%. I know you got very little last year as an increase.
I actually, if you look at the new one in your packet, it is a little bit lower. I was able to go back through. I don't like spending money. I don't. So I actually went back through, and I don't think I have the updated copy, but it's, do you have the bottom line there? Yeah, that one there.
316.
Yep,
Explain what you're doing with the positions, because people are gonna get
Yeah.
confused. And I know you're trying to upgrade and then reduce some of the other things, so that's really the only question we have on your budget, so.
yep. Basically, what we're doing is utilizing town citizens and seniors in a volunteer capacity. So what we're finding is if you look at the numbers in there, we have a chart of people that are attending the senior center from last year to this year. And as you can see, those numbers keep going up because we have the baby boomers now. But the baby boomers are younger seniors who want to do stuff and they want to be active in the community. So what we're doing is changing a position from administrative assistant, transportation coordinator, and making it the assistant director, volunteer coordinator. Part of that is because we have the vans and we do transportation for medical. We have no doctors in town. So if you were to go to your doctor in Worcester and he says, I want to see you on Tuesday, we only go there on Wednesday and Friday. So we're looking at starting a volunteer driver program, which we've been to meetings at other towns and it's been very successful. But in the meantime, we have volunteers. There's a sheet in there that lists some of the volunteers we have, and on the back side it lists volunteers that we're going to be having. So we have, Meals on Wheels, we have kitchen help, we have receptionists, we have the tax work-off program. We have in excess of 70 volunteers currently, and we're looking to at least double that. So,
Dispatcher would handle those people?
well, nope, the volunteer coordinator, the assistant director volunteer coordinator would oversee all of that. The dispatcher would only do dispatch. So what we're looking to do is have a part-time dispatcher, which would only be, 19 hours. It is in there 25. It can be 19, 25, whatever you guys feel comfortable with. And then what we would do is supplement that with a volunteer from the tax work-off program. So in the afternoons would be a tax work-off volunteer doing dispatch. So we think that model will work good for us. It'll be a tax savings for the town, and it would work great giving somebody, a purpose. We all need a purpose. So,
I personally think you do a wonderful job there, and
thank you.
I know we're moving things around. Explain the outreach worker's salary so we understand what's going on.
Yep. Basically, over the last few years, we kind of looked at what's going on in outreach, and a lot of things that were being handled by outreach no longer are. We don't do home visits. That's done by Montechusett Home Care. Because if we go in and do a home visit, then we just have to call Montechusett and say, hey, can you go do a home visit? Because they're the ones that are going to set up the personal care, the Meals on Wheels, the, whatever it is they need will be housekeeping. That'll be set up by them, not us. Certain things like that are now done through other agencies. Insurance needs, we have Shine. They're there twice a month and serving health insurance needs for elders, and they come and talk to you about your insurance. We're also going to be, with our new town webpage, we're going to be having applications available online. So you'll be able to go online and fill out your SNAP application, your housing application, your fuel assistance application, all of that will be available there. And we do have a resource room. So we have 4 computers that are set up in our resource room that you'll be able to utilize those computers, and we'll have volunteers available to help with that as well.
So you'll help me signing up for my Social Security?
Absolutely. Next available appointment's May 1st.
Keep that in mind. You ever wait 2 hours on the line for them? It's unbelievable.
No, but we do have the van. I mean, I just had a gentleman that wanted to come in, and basically what he needed was the Social Security office in Worcester. So, we do have transportation available, take you out there, get your business done, come on back. And transportation's huge right now because the home care agencies, they're charging anywhere from $70 to $100 for one trip to a doctor's office with a companion. So we have the van that goes to Worcester. It's $450 round trip. I mean, you can't beat that. So, but the thing is, like I said, we only go to Leominster on Mondays. So if your doctor's in Leominster and he doesn't see patients on Mondays, you're out of luck. So, like I said, we really want to get the volunteer piece really solid.
Okay. You guys got any questions on the change of positions? I've talked to her a little bit about it, so I'm more informed.
We've
Huh.
rated the positions
All right,
already.
they're all graded and ready to go.
They are.
And again, last year, I think we gave her 1%, so I mean, maybe we'll find a little extra for her, right, Barry?
And what I
Absolutely,
did,
James.
Yeah.
what I did too this year, if you look on the expense sheet, we're not gonna be attending the conference this year. We're gonna do a cost savings and go to the conference every other year. So like I said, we didn't put that in there. And then what I did too with the building utilities and maintenance, I put that on a separate line so that when that does go to facilities, you just move that line. I did have one question from the Council on Aging Chairman, and he wanted to know, with this budget, like the line for facilities, is when it goes to town meeting, is that gonna be on our budget, or is that gonna be taken out of our budget?
My understanding is the facilities has a tentative budget set up,
Okay,
but he's coming in here as soon as possible so we can
Yeah.
get an idea of what's going on, and
yeah,
we're not absolutely sure where the number's gonna be. He may control yours, we may have it in his.
okay,
So that's, the selectmen have been working with him on it, and I guess he's getting close.
okay. Because I know, like I said, his preference would be have it, moved under them instead of having somebody use it under ours.
Okay,
But that's just, like I said, his preference,
okay. Well,
so.
like I said, we've given him a year to put a plan together, and I think he's
Yep.
getting close.
Yeah, and I think he and I are very close on the number too. We've talked about it as well.
Okay, so we're dying to see him too, so we'll see.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Okay, any other questions?
All set.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
See you, Deb.
Thanks, Deb.
Mike, would you like to give us a little upscale on the, our exciting facilities department? Talked to Mr. Conley the other day, it says it's getting close.
Yeah, I think just briefly,
As brief as possible,
yeah,
Mike.
as the chair indicated, the facilities director is putting together a budget, looking at, comprehensive, and then we can discuss back and forth with Selectmen and Finance Committee how we want that, narrowed down. Whether we want to go with everything into that department, or whether we want to separate the school from the town, to keep them separate. Still managed by that person, but the funding source. And the other would be whether you wanted just personnel and expenses, or do you want heat, light, and power, all of that. So we're initially taking an overview approach, comprehensive approach, and then we can discuss throughout the process how much or how little you want that person.
Yeah, I'm worried about, with school per pupil costs, and I don't know how that will affect him. That's one of the items they give us, the budget per pupil. Now, if we pull everything out and jumble it in one budget, maybe two facilities departments, one for the school, one for the town.
Well, and that's a good point. Certainly that school piece would have to be accounted separately. So whether it's in separate budgets, or even if it's in one lump sum budget, he would be responsible for internal accounting
Right.
to state how much was spent on schools, directly on schools, so that number can be used at the year end of the report to the DOE, so that it does make sure we're in compliance with the net school spending, which then breaks out what that per pupil cost would be.
Okay.
So, but either way, whether it's in a separate line item or in one line item, we still have to track that. That was upfront, he knows that upfront that that has to be
Okay,
done.
we're gonna try to get him in here right away to see where he is, see what's gonna go on.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, and it's, excuse me, and it said, it's the first pass, so certainly we have time, to really hone it and refine it. I think, as the senior center director indicated, he's met with the departments to find out approximately what their costs are, to try to get a handle on that. And then if we come to agreement on what those numbers are, where they get placed, it's all the shell game as to where everyone's comfortable.
Yeah, it's the same dollars where it comes out of.
Exactly. So whether they stay in the departments and we hit off those line items for heat, light, and power, whether it all gets into one budget, whether it's one town, one school, there's many different models, but But I've asked them to take the comprehensive approach initially and put it all into one, but it's certainly open for discussion.
Has he met with the
what
selectmen
final-
at all in regard to that? Has he met with the selectmen at all? Or just-
He is not, nope,
Okay.
nope, so he will be coming in, the selectmen, will have a list of budget, hearings, as the finance committee is doing tonight, and the selectmen will have a list tomorrow night at their meeting as well, and they'll continue that now through the next month, and that will probably be, on one of the lighter nights, we'll have facilities in, because it will be a lengthy discussion, so that will be coming up shortly.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to bug you too much.
Thank you.
You
Nope,
look relaxed back there.
Anytime, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Michael.
Just for everybody's note, we're going to meet every Tuesday until we get all the budgets reviewed. Then we'll sit down and get an overview, and then move forward, decide what we want to give the school, and then try to budget around it.
5:45?
Yeah, 5:45.
Okay.
No good TV on Tuesdays, right?
No.
I think she's outside. I don't know, she's waiting for someone.
It's Emily, I just saw her in the doorway there.
Can you read that print? I'm too old to read that print.
Let me see if I can with my new eyes.
See new eyes? I'm just saying, if I have to read that, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. I can.
I'll have to get the magnifying glass.
Which budget is that?
This is the Parks and Rec budget. You have a copy of it?
Yeah, I got it, I have it here.
Bob, you- How you doing?
Lisa, how are you?
Well, we were talking about you.
Yeah. See you later. Huh? There she is.
Get the fire department.
About a year ago, you said you were on the historical thing for the council on aging.
Hmm.
Historical society. There was a codicil on there.
Got the time, Barry?
And they had
6:10.
changes from society, commission to society. I said, well, we'll come up with it. There's a fund that Clinton Foundation that set up a thing in
Yeah.
case they run into trouble. And it's sitting there, they give you 0.26%. That's for 5 years.
We should do better than that now.
I'm good.
Yeah. You get a little more for it anyways.
Made a call, make a
Yeah.
call. Good.
0.26.
Yeah. Next week, why don't you call and come in early?
Next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Still got your coffee?
I don't, I just, over the weekend, I picked up something. and
Assistant director.
We were at a function, a bunch of us, and a lot of us got sick. I don't know what it was.
Somebody carried it there.
Yeah, some of us.
Okay, no big deal.
I think we're really ahead anyway.
We are the, like I said, the Board of Health won't be here, so. Fire Department may have an article, I think it's for repairs, we're not gonna really vote on it tonight.
What time do you tell those guys to come? For the police?
Fire's gonna be here at 6:30 and police at 6:50.
Does the fire talk about the ambulance fund too?
They usually do. I don't see it in here, so.
Yeah, there's one, it was part of what Diane sent.
Fire.
The ambulance enterprise fund, is that what it is?
You got it. Wanna make a couple copies for you?
Hello.
Hello.
You're Starfish, did anybody else meet with you yet?
Nope.
Okay, so we're the first ones?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, that, two other people,
Oh,
two
yeah,
other
okay,
departments.
okay. Well, we just finished dinner together, so we were timing ourselves, we were walking at the right time and not be a minute too early. Well,
Okay.
actually, 5 minutes early we were planning on. So, and you know, I kick myself now because at our last few board meetings, we've been having chocolates and popcorn and guests, and I say, we like to say we have fun, but we get things done. So at the select board meeting we came to last week, was it last week? I don't know what day it is. You sure? Okay. I brought the candies with us because we didn't want them hanging around. If I thought about it, I would have brought them tonight too, but I don't know, we're just not in that zone.
Just
Is
want to advise you, the meeting's being taped,
Now?
right
Oh
now.
my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No,
Sorry.
I just want to tell you, that's all.
Okay, is there a way to turn up the volume a little bit on your microphones? Because Ed has a little bit of a...
I'll yell at Ed if I have
Okay,
to,
just
okay?
want to make sure.
Okay?
Thank you. Okay. Just gonna turn down my phone.
If you're ready, you can get started.
Anytime.
Do you need us to introduce ourselves or just jump right in?
What?
Do you want us to introduce ourselves or jump right
Yeah.
You can jump right in.
in? Okay.
Just get going. We're pretty informal here.
Okay. All right. So everyone, I think, got the packet that I submitted to Mr. Ward.
Right.
You know, FY20 is slated to bring some significant changes for the town of Clinton and the town departments, especially our department. With the addition of the facilities department, the department's budget looks significantly different than it has in past years, at least the part that I'm submitting. I've been working, you know, with Russell Carlstead on the facility side of things, so that part of our budget is gonna be reflected in the budget he presents to you and to the town. So basically, I'll just kind of go over some changes and then we can answer any questions that you may have. The biggest change that we're requesting is a recreation coordinator position to be added to our department. We spent the fall meeting with the personnel board to really develop this position and to get approval from them, which they did in that memorandum.
I just want to
Yep.
make a statement. We did not give you an approval. We approved
Okay.
the position, but not the approval.
You approved the grade
Okay.
and the pay.
Grading the pay,
Okay.
yes.
So it looks like they approved what the position is, not that we'd have the funding or anything, but that they supported the position itself. So that's what I did attach that here. So the recreation coordinator, as we're anticipating it, would be a part-time year-round position, about 19 hours a week, hopefully with more hours in the summer to really assist with the summer playground and teen adventure program that we have. Based on the town grid that we have, the amount requested is $17,768. Before removing all of our facility-related stuff, when I was doing the budget, I was able to free up about $16,000 from our budget, which would really help cover that. So really, it would only be a $2,000 increase, and then after meeting with Russ, he absorbed all the facility stuff, so the numbers look a little different. But basically, this position would really help to avoid the changeover we have year to year with seasonal people working in the office and coordinating the recreation programs. You know, Summer Playground is one of our most popular and most important events because it's 100 kids that we work with every day, and you need consistency in that. You need someone who has a background in working with kids and working with a program like that. And this position would work closely with that program to really, you know, make sure that parents have someone they can trust when they're dropping their kids off. The position would also be responsible for various seasonal programs, and helping, you know, do some office work to do registrations, marketing, that sort of thing. Excuse me. Other than that, we had a slight increase to our recreation miscellaneous expenses due to increases in administrative needs, such as software, you know, computers, office stuff like that. But other than the new position that we are asking for, which is really needed given that our programs and events are all growing, what our department's being asked to do is growing. Our department, if you look at the numbers, is actually down 28% this year, and normally you guys are upset that it's up, so that was exciting. But, you know, other than that, the capital projects that we've been doing are all being coordinated through the facility director, and the monies are being requested, you know, based on his capital improvement plan, so we're not planning on asking for any additional warrant items, just, you know, the budget that we're presenting here. And as a department, we've been working really hard to get donations and grants to offset a lot of the capital improvements. I'm working on one with the senior center now. We applied for a big grant for lighting down at Savage Field. We've gotten donations from local banks and businesses to help purchase benches and, you know, stuff like that throughout town, which really helps to free up some of that capital improvement money. So, I don't know if you guys have anything to add, but.
Who's currently doing the recreational coordinator job now?
Well, we have a recreation manager who oversees all of the recreation programs.
So this is an assistant for them?
Essentially, yeah, so it'd be an assistant for them and the whole department. She doesn't do everything. I still shoulder a good amount of the events and the programs, because it's a lot for any one person to do, so together we work to make sure that all the events and programs are covered and coordinated.
The extra girl you have in the summer, where does she come from?
Like, where is she paid out of right now?
Well, yeah, where's she paid out of? That
She's paid out of recreation wages right now.
So basically, you could hire that coordinator out of recreational wages if you so desired, correct?
We don't have enough to cover that year-round along with the summer help that we need, so we wouldn't be able to sustain it year-round, which is why we're asking for a year-round position and salary to go with it.
Yeah, the other thing too is we were trying to make sure, the scope of the summer playground is extensive, and one of the things we keep finding with the breadth and depth of what the current staff has to do, they're very often working beyond not just their 35-hour-a-week covering out their normal salary, but they're working much more than that. And we're salaried employees. We're also going to be discussing with Bob Gibbons the extent of whether or not there's a issue with overtime, not that there's, like, for instance, obviously Emily is not she's a salaried employee, but there's a problem area that we're dealing with him, but, we need to be able to cover the work without asking our employees to work a lot of hours without being paid, to be compensated for it, because there's just a lot of work going on. So,
Again, this is a transition year, especially for your department. It's a transition year because we are giving up the actual day-to-day stuff on the parks, correct?
because the facilities is taking
Right.
over, you're saying, yes?
So we don't know how many hours that's gonna save the
Right.
management and the people there. At least I don't have an idea myself.
The only thing, I know, like, the select board was asking us this question when we stood in front of them. The one thing that we were concerned about is, this is not something that we feel qualified, sorry, the wrong word. We do not feel comfortable asking, like, a high school student to be stepping up into that role, like, to take any of our places, not us, but the staff's places, if there's a need for the director or the recreation manager to have to go be someplace else physically and leave everything in the hands of a high school student. That's not a good idea.
Okay, I
You
understand.
need somebody that is qualified, that can CPR trained, whatever it is they need to be able to step in and be the reigning person, adult, that can take over and do that role because there's oftentimes, if I'm not mistaken, Emily, when you have to have two adults in separate places functioning when the summer playground is in operation. It's just the nature of the business. Am I right?
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of, obviously Russ stepping in, the whole town's trying to adjust to that, but in my conversations with him on how he anticipates things going at least, the director will still be involved in a lot of the park stuff, just not as much on the day-to-day, more of like the big picture, so more grant writing, more capital improvements, more like master planning, things that the director doesn't necessarily have as much time for now because of all the other smaller things. So the recreation coordinator will, that position will help to take some of that smaller stuff off so that we can work, big picture and keep moving forward for the department and for the town.
Plus, they also have the office coverage and the summer playground, separate facilities, separate
I
locations.
wouldn't argue with you that you have a time constraint, especially in the summer, but
Yeah.
that's a 3-month window.
Yeah.
And it's grown from just the summer. I know that's one of the programs that we are concerned with, but we have about 2 to 3 large events a month now, plus all the small programs we do after school and on the weekends. And, currently it's the director and the recreation manager splitting time, to cover those. And so, that makes for a lot of work above and beyond what we're actually
Could you get the
paid
volume,
for.
could you list the programs and the volume of participants in those programs for us?
Volume
That
for
might
the
be helpful.
participants?
Yeah, well, I'd like to know you're running 3 summer programs with 30 kids, 20 kids,
Oh,
10
I
kids.
think there's a.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd
for
like-
summer-
I don't have that.
Sure,
And
sure.
it's very hard, we don't like creating new positions. 'Cause new
Right, we
positions,
understand.
part-time become full-time.
Sure.
Then we pay the insurance, and then that's how we get in the hole.
Well, so for
So-
the summer, the largest one we have during the summer is our summer playground teen adventure program. That's 110 to 125 kids a day for 7 weeks straight.
Okay, I'd like something on paper that you
Oh,
can give
okay.
me.
Okay, I'm
So I
sorry.
can look
Yeah.
at.
Sure.
Because it's gonna be hard for us, we're hard pressed to open up any new positions till we know what the budget ends up with.
Jim, what's your time deadline that you want that information? I'm sure Emily's gonna generate it quickly, but what ideally, at the end of the week?
3 weeks, it's
Oh,
not tomorrow.
Okay.
We don't make any decisions till May around here.
Okay,
anyway.
but what,
Should I
no,
send it to Mr. Ward and then he'll forward it to you?
That's
or-
fine.
okay,
But we'd like to have an idea of the volume and why you're asking for this position.
yeah.
And I agree with you, probably in the summer you're overwhelmed, but
Well,
December 25th you're not, so.
Let me just also say on behalf of the board too, and Ed, I know would echo this, that, we've been sitting on the board now, me 12 years, how many years for you?
I've been on the board since 2007.
Okay, so about the same time for me, I'm 1 year behind you, but we've seen an amazing leap and exponential rise in activity in this department.
Well, we're running a different department than we ran 15 years
Yeah,
ago.
no kidding, and so that has been
Especially
increasing.
with activities and events.
Right, and
I've been here longer than you, so
Yeah,
I
of
do
course, so,
understand
but
that.
incremental, but in terms of people's responses to us, they have been thrilled that we are doing as much as we are in Clinton. It's not just about the park, it's now about recreation, and it's about the hum. And now we have people coming to us and saying, hey, what are you doing about, or can we explore the possibility of looking into adaptive sports and sensory events, meaning people with disabilities? I mean, because they're not finding necessarily the support they need through, is it CPAC? Sorry, what does it stand for? I'm not sure. But so we're actually saying, you know what? Come to us. We want to partner with you. We're happy to try and do some things. So we're like broadening our spectrum. Not that we want to add more to our plate, but we don't want to turn anybody away. Because our message to the community is, Parks and Rec is here to help everybody. And we're not just, we know there's a senior center, but we're happy to say to seniors, hey, Parks and Rec is here for you too. We're here for every taxpayer, okay?
Okay, so I'd like to get an idea what the volume of the kids
Sure.
you have in these programs. And that's not the summer, but the year, so you
Right.
must keep some kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have
It doesn't have to
records
be,
of it.
it doesn't have to be finite, it just has to be a rough idea.
Yeah, because we're registrations, there's all sorts of, information that she
Let's-
has.
When we explore the budget a little further, we'll talk about it. Again, a lot of this money, a lot of this 17,000 you're asking for, a lot of that, somebody was doing that job last year out of your activities fund. So,
The recreation wages, you mean?
you
Is that?
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a seasonal, we called it a lead counselor, but our recreation manager was out of the office doing this job plus her
Right.
regular job. So this again would allow, the recreation manager to keep working on additional programming and to look a little bigger picture than to be, doing arts and crafts for 8 hours a day where we can, better use their time as well. So,
Okay.
if you have to reduce our recreation wages a little bit to make this position work, but it doesn't, we still have summer counselors to pay, we still have an office person to pay, so that's why this is asked for, like, in addition to those recreation wages, because it's not a clear-cut trade.
Yeah, I'm just making a point that we paid, some of those duties were done by other people and we paid them, so. I mean, we could talk about it, we don't know where we're gonna be on the budget
Yep.
yet. But again, new positions are very hard to get approved here.
Sure, we understand.
Well, we hope you consider it, because it definitely is, we've asked for it for the last couple of years, because our workload is not decreasing, it just keeps increasing, and if, the town and the community want us to continue with that volume or more, eventually there's gonna need to be help, because only, 2 people can't do everything, so we're gonna need help.
Okay,
Do you have anything else to say? I would like to add one other thing that, gentlemen, you're not aware of as of right now. We just got a notice on Monday that our incredible director is actually resigning because she has another, she doesn't have another offer, but her husband has a new offer with University of New Hampshire Durham. His career is taking in that direction, so the family is moving, and Emily is going to be finding another job in that direction, and we're not happy to see that, but we're very happy for her family. So we have a new challenge as a board to enter into a season of looking for a new director, which means that adds another challenge to our department, being able to enter into a phase of figuring out how we're going to do this, and more pressure to be able to offer the same level of service and function and terrific stuff to carry on the tremendous work that Emily started. So,
Emily has expanded the activities down there tremendously. so
oh,
we know that.
incredible. But I'm just making the point that not only are we going to be without her leadership, we now have to try and maintain that without losing a step and keeping the rhythm the same. And we have a lot of work on our plate right now to get that to happen, and let alone find somebody of her caliber to take over, but also without a recreation coordinator position being instituted, it's gonna be that much harder to take the people that we currently have, still look for somebody else, and all of that. It's a lot. So just letting you know that. And we do
Okay.
celebrate you, Emily, and all that you've done for the town. It's been a tremendous
Thank
asset.
you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's think about it. We got your budget.
Yep.
I don't see anything that's unattainable, but you have to see what goes on later in the year. Okay?
And thank you again, too, for what you do every year for us.
And we're getting taped now, so,
Yeah, that's
it's an
okay.
exciting meeting.
This is it's still good to be kind to your leaders and let them know that we appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Honored it, huh?
What you do, adjust the budget for overtime and figure that'll
No,
plug
no,
everything in?
we've got a lot of issues, Jimmy, we gotta discuss today.
Okay, well,
So,
the floor is yours.
so just a couple of corrections first. We'll start with the corrections. One of the corrections is, go to, let me find it, incentive pay. When I put it in, there was a couple of firefighters that were in school and they're gonna have their credits. So, fire incentive, 15,520 is amended to 12,720.
12,000.
How many copies you need, Jim? I just got one. If you just
No, I'll take that and I'll pass it.
just gotta amend that one down.
Well, we like things that will bend down, you know?
And then the other correction is, let me get to it, would be the sick time buyback, 26,216. If you look down to budget notes, it talks about, I've got a firefighter that's been out for a long time and he's gonna retire. And it says in it, included in the above sick time is $10,000 plus change for his firefighter's retirement. However, it's not included. That was, I thought I added it in, but then when I went to recheck everything to come up here, I realized it's not in there.
So that should be 36?
So that 26, you would add $10,030.29 to that to correct that line.
Okay.
So then just, starting from the top,
Let's, I'm looking at all these numbers here, the only question is overtime. The rest of
okay.
them are pretty
All right, well,
standard.
all right, so basically overtime is pretty straightforward. It's been underfunded, and we've corrected it at the end of the year several times due to firefighters' salaries having vacancies. Hopefully that's gonna come to an end. I'm trying to hire firefighters. I just hired 3 firefighters. However, sitting here right now, I have 7 firefighters out. I have 2 vacancies. I have 1 firefighter that just had emergency surgery the other day, is gonna be out for a couple of months. And I have 4 firefighters out, injured on duty, one of which I just spoke about, he's gonna retire. I retired him. The other one just had another surgery, another one's getting ready to have a surgery, another one's got a second opinion. So these are long-term injuries. When I spoke to Diane, I kind of went over Diane just because she has the numbers. And traditionally, the last, I believe it was 5 years she did for an average, was $200,000 in overtime. This year, obviously, is just going to be unprecedented just because of the fact that I'm down to, right now, I'm operating 2 5-man shifts and 2 4-man shifts to cover 24 hours a day, 5 firefighters down there. So the overtime is just anybody takes personal, vacation, sick, doesn't make any difference, it's caused overtime, no matter what happens.
You have an extra firefighter somewhere in your budget.
And I hope I just hired him.
Okay.
I just hired him. But let me tell you what the downside to that is. The downside to that is I hired 3 firefighters. I've got their physicals. I got to get their physical abilities test. Then I file with the fire academy for them to go to school. Sitting here today, they start the academy in December. They graduate next year. So they won't even constitute manning for the town of Clinton until 2021.
This is Mike, you're not the first chief that has this problem.
No, I know.
But we're gonna have to look at the overtime
Yeah.
number. Listen, I have no argument with you that because of circumstances behind your control, you're in this situation.
Right.
I mean, that's why we got you an extra firefighter that's never
Right.
really gonna be extra, so.
Well, what some of the other problems are is, back in 1986 when I became a firefighter, there was literally 100+ town of Clinton residents on the list to become a firefighter. This last list I got, there actually, believe it or not, there was 1. I finally got one. The last several lists that John McLaughlin, my predecessor, and myself had hired off, there's 0, not 1 Clinton resident. This last one had 1 resident on it. So they're coming from Westfield, Canton, Mansfield, we hired a firefighter, he's been with us for several years, from New Bedford. It's just hard. And then I actually was getting ready to I sent out notices for interviews, and at least some of the guys were kind enough to call me and say, hey, chief, you know, it's too far of a move for me, I'm gonna decline the interview. They didn't waste my time, you know, so it's very difficult. So we interviewed 4 people when it got all said and done, and I hired 3 of them, you know, but that's the downside to it, is you gotta wait like almost a year to get them. It's like,
Well,
it's
we
kind
do
of
understand that. We're gonna consider it. It's one of the things that we've talked about together a couple of times, is getting the overtimes where we can actually use that as a budget number. Now, let's go over your fire apparatus program, because I
So,
know you've changed the
yeah.
way we repair things.
Oh, I've got a transfer for tonight. I'm just gonna kind of give you a heads up. I'm gonna be at the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night to give it to them. Basically, I sent I have three engines, 3 frontline engines. 2015, my oldest engine 2 is a 1994, and then I think it's a 2005, my engine 3. So my engine 3, my middle piece, has a catastrophic oil leak. It's had it for a long time. So last year when you gave me extra money, I took it, I sent it down to Greenwood. I sent engine 2 to Greenwood because I want to try to get it so it's reliable. So I get that reliable. Now I got my 2015 engine. That's reliable, that's new. Then I can send this piece out and get it repaired. Finally get the top of the motor off, get it repaired. Well, here it is March, and it's not repaired. Because every time I turn around, engine 2, something breaks down again on it. And my new piece, engine 4, was just out of service for 2 months waiting for parts. Get parts, what happens? Get the wrong parts. You know, and it's like I've been chasing my tail. Next thing you know, I get a phone call, hey, come down here. I ride down there, and the leaf springs are broken right out of the truck. I mean, the roads are what they are. We're heavy, we're running water, we got a lot of water. I think this past year I've replaced leaf springs in every piece of apparatus in the fire station. So when I sent engine 2 down to try to get that to hold its own, so I could at least take the time to take this out for a couple months, I dropped, I think, $45,000 in that piece to try to get it to where it can stay running. Literally, you know, just trying.
As we've talked, you're trying to put these trucks on a maintenance program.
Yeah, correct.
So that we don't have catastrophic problems.
Right, exactly.
And of course, money and getting them in our rotation's been tough on you. So I just want these people to know that. I know what you're trying to do.
And the other thing too is, obviously you guys, you're well aware, we don't have a town mechanic. So all the little oil changes and stuff I'm paying for now because we don't have a town mechanic, so I have to send that out. So John McLaughlin, he kind of like, one of the things that he didn't like, and I can sympathize with him, I totally understand where he's coming from. He didn't like to see the price tags to go to specialty vehicles and Greenwood fire apparatus. However, that's what they do. You got to pay for, you got an airbag problem with your car, you're not going to take it down to the local guy. You got to send it to where these people, that's all they do for a living. I mean, yeah, it comes with a heavy price tag. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't, because it does. But at least it gets done the way it should be. You know, over the years, just try to put a Band-Aid on this, put a Band-Aid on this, put a Band-Aid. And now, you know what? I'm sitting here holding the bag of Band-Aids, and now this is where I'm at, you know.
If you have a major apparatus problem that you think is gonna cost over 20 grand, we can certainly think about articles, so you have all the money to fix it right the first time.
Right.
And that's what our free cash is for, equipment and improvements. So that's something we can discuss a little later.
Yep.
So if you're talking about sending it down there, it's $35,000 to make it brand new, you know, I think the board would consider that.
It's just that's the issue, is it's just like, you know, I get it running. I say, well, you know what, let's run it for 2 weeks. Let's just run it for 2 weeks. Make sure it's running good, it's running strong. Something else happens.
Okay, well, let's talk about it a little more, especially, like I said, especially in an article end. That way we don't have to put it in your budget, it's there forever, and we can, you know, fix it all at once. You put the real money into it. Because putting $5,000 in a truck is not a lot of money.
No.
$50,000 is a lot of money, so.
Right. No, you're right. And that's the issue. Some of these jobs are just like, you know, when you start putting brakes and leaf springs and you start doing stuff on these pieces, it starts to get very costly, very quick. And I'm gonna say I probably have it in the high 90s. I've made copies for myself in each respective apparatus of what I've done. So it's not like if you say, what did you do to engine 2? I can't tell you. I can get all the records, I can show that, I put leaf springs in this, I did this, all the way down, service in the pumps, the whole deal,
Okay, let's go over your ambulance budget a little bit. Not too often a budget goes down in here.
Yep, let me get over to that one. So basically, some of the stuff that went down is the wages are pretty status. I'm trying to estimate, when this firefighter is going to retire to when this new firefighter is going to come on, because then obviously you have a firefighter that's at a different step to the bottom step. So I'm trying to calculate that and adjust that as accurate as I can. One of the things that was just paid off is the bottom. The capital outlay expense, so that's $37,744. That was the last payment on our ambulance, the end of our lease. So now we own the ambulance. The ambulance, as far as going from the bottom, the only reason that I put up the overtime is just knowing that the raise is going to come into play in July 1. I just did that 2.25% into that. However, sitting here right now, what we put in for the last budget, we are just about like perfect. Running into 3 months left, there's about 25% of that left. It's, but the same token, I'm separating everything on overtime that's ambulance and fire to the T, right to the code, because to try to manage it as best as I can, so that, that there, when I explained to you the last budget of why I had to double it, was it went from 2 hours to 4 hours. That's like that will be almost perfect, right to the dime. So that shouldn't go over it whatsoever.
And it says we're gonna have a capital expenditure this year or next year.
Well, on the fire department budget, I put in for this coming fiscal year to put in for an engine. I put in for fiscal year 21, the following one. Once the paramedic study gets done and stuff, and we start looking, our second ambulance is getting old. It's getting to the time we got to replace it, and then we just keep, I think it's every 7 years. It might be 8, but it's 7 or 8. Then you shift them back in the line. Obviously, ambulances are getting pricey, but if the town does, in the event, decide to become a paramedic-based ambulance service, then you're going to need a paramedic. The ambulance is going to change a little. It's going to shift a little. It's right around. I think it was like $300,000.
Okay. So you'll be looking for a new apparatus this year, 550? And what kind of truck will that be?
Well, it's going to be an engine. It's going to be a new engine. It's going to be, there's some good builders out there. I'm going to tell you, as far as brand names, I'm not really an up fan of what we just purchased in 2015. It's kind of run a little more headaches than what I expected. Our Emergency One E1 is one of the biggest manufacturers that we have in our building, and they've been pretty reliable. Engine 2, 1994 is an E1. Engine 3, I think it's an 05 or an 04. That's an E1, and they seem to hold together pretty good.
And this engine will replace what in your thing?
To be determined. I'd like to sit and tell you straight out that it would be our oldest pumper, our 94 pumper. However, if that's running better than something else, I really would have to sit down and determine what to do.
I assume your department heads, the selectmen, will look at that a lot closer, but again, I always believe that the best equipment does the best job, so.
And the situation too is like, if you get it in for July 1, and then you have to spec the truck, you gotta get the truck bid, and then it's approximately 300 days from the time you order it. So we'll just call it a year. Then once you get it, you've got to train on it. You got to get it. We have most of, like the vast majority of the equipment we already have for it. Because you're going to get rid of one, put more. So I think we'll do well with that, but it's just a long time away. So you got to.
You're talking a year and 3 months now before after the town meeting, before it goes on the road and starts working for you.
Exactly. That's why I kind of got to look a little bit out,
Okay, well, I'm gonna look at the overtime figure with Diane, see what's going on.
Mhm.
Does, the board have any questions for the chief?
All set.
Most of these numbers are right on, so. Getting
Jimmy,
a
I
lot better,
brought, Jimmy, I
getting a lot
brought,
better on the books, I wanna
Jimmy,
tell you.
I brought spreadsheets just in case you
Well-
question them, so I try to do a little better job. Seeing as though I didn't even meet with you last year.
Thanks. So we're working on it this year.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you for your time.
sounds good.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Hey,
it.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, this one goes with me. Hey, Chief, you're up.
Again, I wanna point out this meeting's being taped.
We know, we know.
Something
Hey,
happened.
Jimmy, I'm gonna just give you these two here,
Yeah, the
just
spreadsheets,
while I'm
please.
here. Just so that, like I said, I'm gonna talk to the board tomorrow night. Figured I could just kinda give you.
I might check the math for you. This is what you're gonna ask for.
Yeah, a warning, yeah.
We don't have that much money in our account, you know, I just wanna point that out, so.
Sounds good, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's two requests here. $50,000 for repairs, which I knew was coming, and $100,000 for overtime. Both of them we can't approve. We don't have 150 in there, but overtime we'll have to take a look at. We'll find it. Hi, Mark, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you, Jimmy?
Would you like to go over your exciting budget for us?
Okay. Well, it looks like the usual.
Yeah, your wish list gets bigger every time I see you, so.
Wish list. I don't see a wish list there. I try not to ask for anything that's not needed, of course. You know, on the cover letter, it says that we got a 2.25% increase, so that would explain the increase in the salaries. And that has the ripple effect, as you know, goes through the holiday, Quinn bill, and sick day buyback. Also, in the sick day buyback, you have 2 people retiring, so you have an increase of, I think, $10,000 and $6,000 in that area for a couple of people that will be retiring for their sick day buyback. And then you have an increase in the incentive pay. And the increase in the incentive pay, that's for the people that, the officers that do not have the Quinn bill. They have a new educational incentive in the contract, and that increases by $1,000. Plus, some of the officers are achieving more, getting their degree, so that would account for some of the increase there. And then the new equipment is, I've got 2 police cruisers, portable radios, and 3 PCs. And we replace them, we try to replace 3 every year, that's our rotation. We got probably about 15, 16 of them over there.
How many cruises did we get last year, Mark?
We've gotten one for, I think, the past 3 or 4 years. I meant to have the mileage here. I went out to ask your friend Rick Welch for the mileage, and he got to talking to somebody else, and
Can you give me a
and I missed
possible
it.
list of vehicles and mileage for me?
Yeah, I can do that. But we have several cruisers that are over 100,000 miles. Detective car that's over 100,000 miles, and then the other detective car, it's probably in the 85, 90,000 mile range, and that one is older. You know, it's like a 2007, 2008, something like that. So it's an older vehicle. You know, if we had to go with the reduced staffing, if we had to go with the level funded budget, we'd have to cut a couple patrolmen out of there. And then you got the unrealistic cut in the overtime. And then we'd delay some equipment purchases. I know you were concerned about the overtime last June. The overtime, we've been averaging over the years roughly in the $180,000 range is where we've been averaging, and then I think last year it was 120, and this year it's 65. And I had the same problem that the fire chief has with, as far as, I had one officer that was out 8 months, out sick. He wasn't injured on duty, he was out sick. And then I had another officer that was, I've had several out, and it seems when one comes back, another one goes out. And, you know, we have 3, the staffing level is 3. And I don't like to go below 3. I don't have a minimum manning clause like the fire department does. But 3 is the lowest I'll go, 3 officers out there.
Would
So
your
that's where it is. And then
With
the
the
training, the amount of training that they have to do now, Jimmy, is just incredible. Another contractual change there was, they used to have to give 12 hours training a year, and that was negotiated out. And so, right away, we eat up 12 hours of training that they were giving for, they weren't getting paid for the 12 hours training. And so now, for that 12 hours for like the firearms training, they have to qualify with the firearms. And we do that a couple times a year. One time it's on overtime. And then we try and do the rest while they're on shift. They have to do CPR, taser training, Narcan training. That used to be done at in-service training. The state stopped doing that at in-service training, so we had to pick up the burden. I used to send them away for a week, and that would be part of the week. But they've got other things that they're throwing in there, so they threw that out. And then we do active shooting training. Has to be done now. It's something that's expected. And we do that. Every officer has to go through that in case there's an active shooter situation. Very statistically, it's something that's very rare event, but you have to be trained in case something like that happens. We're committed, the Mass Chiefs of Police have committed everyone to join the One Mind campaign, which is to identify a lot of people that we deal with have mental illness. And so with the One Mind campaign, we have to, each officer has to be trained in identifying people, so someone that has a mental illness, to recognize that and get them the help that they need, instead of locking them up and putting them in a cell where that isn't the spot that they don't belong. So every officer has to go through that training, 16 hours. I have to train a minimum of 25% of the department to a 40-hour training session. We've got to get a crisis intervention team together to respond to these situations, to get them to the place where they're supposed to be. And it's very similar with the same thing that it's expected now with the opioid crisis. You can't just ignore every time you have an overdose, go over there and give them some Narcan and get them back on their feet and then forget about it. Now, I'm going to be training people to be recovery coaches and getting them into help and trying to get to these people within 40 hours after having an overdose and try to get them into some recovery program. And it all takes massive amount of time. The job is just changing terribly. So that's where we're spending the overtime on, We had an officer in Haida, the narcotics enforcement officer. They paid all his overtime, huge amount of overtime, probably $20,000 or more a year. He's no longer in Haida. I had to pull him back because I needed staffing here. The schools, they expect the school resource officer. So now I don't have a guy on patrol. I have a guy up at the school. The job is just changing, and it requires an awful lot of time, and unfortunately it's costs money to get these things done.
How many patrolmen do we have in the pipeline that you're going to hire?
None.
So we're fully
We're full staffed, 28 people, including myself.
What if we get you another patrolman? Can we do that in your contract?
That would be very, very helpful. you know? And we've got the dispatchers up there now. So what used to be down at the fire department, I have the dispatching services there, and you gave me an extra guy last year, and we hired people, and, you know, like 50% of them wash out. You have to be able to multitask, not people can do it. So we've hired people and had to let people go, and then we hired somebody, and then another person went off to another job. There's a lot of young kids over there, they're interested in being cops, and they find other positions. So I've never really been up to the allotment of 9 that is allocated for it because of people leaving and people not being able to do the job. So not now, it's coming out of my overtime budgets, which would probably be what would be the fire department's overtime.
We'd like to get you another patrolman so that you can keep training somebody in case you lose somebody to sickness or injury,
Yeah.
which is what we try to do at the fire department, and it still hasn't happened. So I just, you know,
Yeah.
I'd rather pay a guy one time instead of paying another guy a time and a half, so
Yeah.
that would be
Well,
helpful.
That would help. Again, there's just so much that's expected now, I should say, that the job is, you know, they expect a lot more very time-consuming things, you know. Before it was go to the call, stop the disturbance, and go back in your cruise and go to the next call. Now it's take the time and fix the problem so we don't get another call there, you know.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to look at our money, Mark, because it's quite an increase. Well, nothing's impossible, but probable, I don't know. So we'll have to take a look.
Okay.
You guys got any questions for the chief?
All set.
Thank you. You'll get me that list of cars and mileage, okay?
Yeah,
And one of the concerns we have in the budget that we've talked about is getting more overtime money for police and fire, so we know that.
yeah. I mean, right now, you gave me 62,000, I'm probably 80,000 over it right as we speak right now. And I don't see it getting any better for a while. I just got an officer back today, it was his first day back, and I have one that went out the other last week.
Okay, we'll work it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna be here next Tuesday.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to get the facilities manager in as soon as we can. I have been told that he's close. And we'll just keep working through it.
So the same time next week?
Yes. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep. Sure.
Well, glad to hear it. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.